All right. Well, I'm here today with my friend, Dr. Arlene Taylor, and she knows she's one of my favorite people for her positivity and her grace, and she's just an incredible researcher. I trust when she gives me information that she does not open her mouth unless she has read deeply and thoroughly and considered what she's talking about. Dr. Arlene was a registered nurse and then earned her master's degrees and 2 earned doctorates. That's no small accomplishment. And she is the founder and president of Realizations Inc., where they do brain function research. And you can learn all about her at arlenetaylor.org. I encourage you to do that. She has so many, not just articles and blogs, but even activities, things that will really help you with your brain, help you with memory, and just kind of keep you sharp. And when you hear from her, you realize that it's a blessing to pay attention to your health. We share a common positivity, and we really want our body, mind, soul, spirit all to flourish. And so we're going to have a little chat today, always centered around health. But today, in particular, we're talking about PFAS. And so I'm not going to attempt to explain what those are because my friend here is going to do that for us. So welcome, Dr. Arlene. Thank you for joining me today.
It's a pleasure, Wendy. Always a pleasure.
So, okay, so if you could just talk to me kind of in layman terms for those of us who maybe we've never heard of them or we've heard just a little bit about them, like exactly what does PFAS stand for? What are these things?
PFAS, of course, is an acronym. It's for polyfluoroalkyl substances, and that's a mouthful, so I'm glad they're called PFAS. Since at least the 1940s, manufacturers have used these synthetic human-made chemicals in so many ways. PFAS molecules contain chains of carbon that are covered with fluorine atoms, and that combination somehow together forms one of the strongest known chemical bonds on planet Earth. PFAS chemicals are exceptionally durable. They repel water, fire, oil. They're designed to withstand grease, stains, heat, and this makes them incredibly valuable for a variety of products on planet Earth, but it also contributes to their absolute persistence in the environment.
Yeah, so it reminds me of, even when they come up with a medication that's so helpful, but it always has this backlash of side effects. So,
always.
So here we've got this chemical that's been very helpful in fighting fire and grease, all the things that it's good for, but the backlash. And I read in your article where you talked about these PFAS as forever toxic chemicals. So you've just alluded to that they're very persistent. Can you expound on that a little bit and tell me, why are they called forever toxic chemicals?
Well, first, they're toxic because they're harmful to humans and they're harmful to the environment.
Right.
They're forever because they're extremely resistant to degradation, meaning they don't break down. Due to these tight, strong chemical bonds, they're also very hard to destroy. They can stay in environmental groundwater, wastewater, rivers, lakes, reservoirs, soil, and some other things like fast food wrappers, pizza boxes, stain-resistant materials that are used in clothes and furniture, pesticides, waterproof candy wrappers, microwave popcorn bags.
Oh, so
no! I'm using
my microwave popcorn.
not microwave bags anymore. And the list goes on. And they're called ubiquitous because they're everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, current estimates in some of the studies are that 97% of human beings in this country have PFAS chemicals in their bodies already.
Well, just from the list of things you listed, and I was mentally checking off how many of those things are around me on an everyday basis or on a weekly basis. So I think it would almost be impossible for us not to have some impact from PFAS.
I agree.
So since it's all around us, and that's not likely to change, so tell me, what is the big deal about them? What do they do to us?
Well, the big deal is that as they're now being studied, they're being found to be way more problematic than they originally believed. The PFAS family consists of more than 12,000 members, if you will, 12,000 or more different chemicals, and they can contaminate the water supply anywhere, including drinking water. There's an organization called the Environmental Working Group, EWG, which is a nonprofit corporation they have been going around and testing water and drinking water in America. Recently, they reported that in one of their studies, they found PFAS in every single sample except one.
Wow.
Now, another big deal is that they are what we call biochemically accumulative, meaning that they can last in landfill not just for a year or two, but for hundreds of years.
Wow.
And once they get inside the human body, they can stay there for years and years, and perhaps for some people, an entire lifetime. The big deal is that every single PFAS chemical that has been tested has been identified as harmful. You might have noticed on cookware, if you were looking to purchase any recently, that some of them have a little sticker and it will say, free from PFOA and PFOS. Those are just two PFAS chemicals. They've been found to be extremely harmful. So I'm always looking at whatever I buy to see if there's something on there that says free from PFAS or one of its cousins.
Yeah, well, so for sure, I don't want to be heating up my food with something that's going to leach into my food that could harm me. That even if I've gone clean and organic and paid attention to the dirty dozen and everything right, then that final step of cooking, I want to make sure I haven't contaminated my food at the last minute. So that's important. And that's shocking to me that it was in every water sample except one. Like that
in that study.
That's a really shocking revelation, and that it can just live and last in groundwater and rainwater and runoff. That's something really to note and be aware of.
When I got the abstract, I read it 3 times.
Yeah.
Because I thought, oh my goodness, am I reading this correctly? And I was.
Yeah. Well, so in addition to water, like clearly it's all around us in the water. What other things might contain PFAS?
Well, you mentioned firefighting foam. Very helpful with that.
Right.
But again, when you're fighting a fire, you've got the water hose, and I guess you got the foam machine. And so they sort of get into the wastewater supplies, and then they find their ways into streams and rivers and lakes and drinking water sources.
Wow.
See, PFAS coatings are used in so many products, clothing, furniture, adhesives because of their bonds, food packaging, heat resistant, non-stick cooking surfaces, and we mentioned that. Insulation in electrical wires. Unfortunately, they're reported to also be found in sunscreen.
Right.
Eye makeup and other forms of trying to make ourselves look better. Nail polish, dental floss, shampoo. I carry a magnifying glass and I read labels now. They can build up in the human body.
Right.
And they're resistant to being excreted. So the more exposure, the more chance you have for this bioaccumulation to occur. and they're absorbed faster than the body can eliminate them.
Okay, so you mentioned exposure, and in the different ways that exposure can occur, and I wonder the difference of obviously coming in contact with your skin versus ingesting whatever the amounts of and how it gets into your body. Talk to me about exposure and how does what's the link to our exposure to PFAS and our health? Some of the things that they've discovered, even now, I think they're probably just discovering, because it's kind of a modern situation. They haven't been looking at this for 100 years.
No, and some of the studies do say strongly suggest further research is going to be done. Well, you can be exposed by drinking contaminated water.
Yeah.
Wherever you get it from.
Right.
People go camping and drink out of the stream, and they may get it there, but certainly in, tap water. If you're working around PFAS, as in a manufacturing company,
right,
that are making chemicals, or firefighting, if you don't have a mask on and you've got all this foam combining with the water,
right,
using products that contain PFAS, or absorbing them in contaminated food. They've been linked to so many health problems, and we're just getting started, as you mentioned.
Right.
They can contribute to poor health, even when the individuals have been exposed to just a small amount, because they stay in the body. Studies have shown that PFAS can lead to a risk for kidney cancer, testicular cancer, higher cholesterol levels, damage to the liver because of what it does to liver enzymes. It can increase blood pressure, contribute to high blood pressure. It can contribute to preeclampsia, that awful stuff that can happen to pregnant women when they're
right,
feet and legs swell, and it's terrible. It can also impact weight in infant birth weights, making them lower than would be desirable. They can decrease the ability of the body in children to get a benefit from a vaccine, and that's kind of scary.
Right.
And they damage the brain-body immune systems, period.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's where you and I always come back to, right? Is immune system and inflammation. These, the link between inflammation and our immunity, and the link, but it seems like inflammation is at the root of all disease process in the body.
It's been linked with more than 50 chronic diseases, and so I want to keep the inflammation down in my body.
Right. Well, so talk to me about PFAS and what that does to the immune system, and what your thinking is regarding inflammation.
Well, what we think we know so far is that PFAS chemicals are called endocrine disruptors, meaning they interfere with the hormone systems. So both inflammation and immune system alteration are major concerns. They're linked, for example, with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. PFAS appears to activate some of the same receptors that fatty acids activate, leading to what? Inflammation of the liver.
Right.
Analogous to the results of eating a very unhealthy diet. Researchers have found that these toxic forever chemicals impact both the body's immune system and the brain's immune system.
Wow.
The lymphatic vessels that you may have remembered from earlier discussions were only discovered in 2016.
Right.
Nobody knew. They're redoing all the textbooks because they didn't think the brain had an immune system. Well, it does.
It does.
So in 2021, animal models and human studies both reported that PFAS can alter the immune systems, potentially weakening their ability to fight disease and preventing the body from producing the desired levels of antibodies in response to vaccines. And I will digress to make the comment that I'm wondering if the individuals who had breakthrough COVID after receiving the vaccines perhaps had higher levels of PFAS in their body.
In their body, that's a possibility.
The American Heart Association, I found this interesting, reported that middle-aged women who have high blood concentrations of PFAS are 70% more likely to develop elevated blood pressure than their peers who have lower levels of those chemicals. I mean,
Wow.
That's just scary. And it's, I
Right?
certainly have reached middle age for a female.
Me too. I'm going to live to 120.
And postmenopausal women already have a drop in their estrogen that impacts the immune system.
Right.
And so then you have this pro-inflammatory response already because of lowered estrogen. Now you add PFAS, and they really have an increased risk for atherosclerosis and stroke. And you can start seeing that whatever is going on already,
Right.
PFAS can just add to it and exacerbate it.
Yeah. And you mentioned non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And the reason that caught my ear is because it seems like at every dinner party that I'm at right now, somebody is dealing with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease in my circles. It just like out of the blue, where is that coming from? But if it's linked to the amount of PFAS in the body and all the things that are surrounding us that have it, particularly just drinking it, if we're just drinking it in the water all day, drinking that in, using it in all the cooking, everything we're doing, it's no wonder that some of these conditions that you didn't hear about 25, 30, 40 years ago, unless someone was unhealthy. Healthy people are struggling with odd issues. And it does make you wonder and at least consider that we should pay attention to PFAS and do whatever it is we can to mitigate and to reduce our exposure to them.
And there you come back to the bioavailability, the bioaccumulativeness. Because let's say that they're eating a menu that isn't good for the liver, and now you add PFAS to that. And if by any chance they take wine with dinner every night, okay, there you've got three factors right there, and it's bioaccumulative.
Yeah, that's important to remember. That's important. So thank you for bringing that up. So if PFAS, if they're in the water supply, clearly they're in the water supply. No one's denying that. And they're dangerous. So as we're just finding out about them, what do we know that's starting to be done about it?
I just got an article not long ago that reported on what the United States Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, started doing in June of 2022. That's when they started issuing a warning against what they called toxic forever chemicals in drinking water, which is where I think probably that phrase came from.
Right.
The EPA is making available $1 billion, not million, billion. $1 billion in grant funding to help communities that are on the front lines of PFAS contamination, because some places in the country have a lot more contamination than others. And first on their list is to reduce PFAS in drinking water, especially in communities that are facing this disproportional impact. So their strategies include technical assistance, certainly water quality testing, contractor training, and the installation of centralized treatment technologies and systems. Once we mentioned earlier, they're very hard to destroy.
Right.
So what else could be done? Can we extract them and send them out into outer space? I don't know what, but that's really scary.
Right. And it will certainly take time, as knowledge comes, it will take time for companies to consider alternatives that might give us some of the same benefits without using these chemicals. And it's not like you could just boil your water and they go away.
No,
That's not how you get rid of them. The only way you could get rid of them would be, to have something that would help you filter them out at the
exactly.
source. So how can, well, that brings us to how do we protect ourselves from ingesting these PFAS?
Well, when you look at all the research, I think the number one thing is you want to drink the cleanest, purest water you can possibly find.
Yeah.
So for me, I avoid drinking tap water. I would never drink tap water anywhere unless I had to have the water, because your body needs the water. But
right.
Otherwise, I don't drink tap water. Neither do I drink bottled water in plastic. Go to the airport and the bins are just filled with the plastic water bottles, and that I don't think is too safe.
Right.
I personally drink purified water. I also use clean filtered water in all my cooking.
Right.
I carry a stainless steel thermos of purified water in the car so that I don't have to stop and run in and buy a bottle of plastic. I read labels, Wendy, and that means you have to carry a magnifying glass because some of the print is ridiculously small. And my brain's opinion is that that's on purpose.
That's on purpose. Yeah.
Because if you knew that the number one ingredient in 7 different types of catsup, for example, the first ingredient is high fructose corn syrup, which is another one of these, things you really don't want.
Right.
Maybe they wouldn't buy it. So I carry a little magnifying glass, and I don't care if people think as I'm looking through it that, oh my, she must be 130. She can't see anything. It's my body. I'm going to read.
That's right.
I carefully read the composition of cookware, and I look for those that don't have any of those 2 really bad ones, very harmful ones that have been so common. I read the labels on shampoo. I read the labels on makeup.
So are they listed on labels? Is it listed as PFAS or are you looking for that polyfluoral?
I'm looking for both.
For both.
Or I'm looking for something that says, no PFAS.
Gotcha. Okay. And my trick, I don't have a magnifying glass, but I use my phone camera and blow it up. So for those who are not ready to carry a magnifying glass, you got a phone in your pocket, you can still blow it up and or take a picture of it, blow it up and read.
I don't want to buy anything that's wrapped against my food, so that, I used to grab sandwiches for lunch. I'm making my sandwiches at lunch now.
Right.
I look carefully for companies that say products are free from PFAS, and there are companies that are saying that now. You can even Google on internet companies that are working to keep PFAS out of their products, and that's been helpful.
That's a good tip. So I know you and I both have an Ion Thrive water machine, and with the just the awareness that PFAS are in so much of the drinking water around us. And I do believe we even we checked with Greg to find out, okay, is Ion Thrive, does their filtration, is that 0.01 micron small enough that it catches these things? So, my understanding is that this is like one of the best machines available as far as filtering down to the smallest possible, particle to have pure, clean water. So tell me how you feel about using your Ion Thrive machine and how that makes you feel about with PFAS and what you think, if research shows what this could remove from the water supply.
I'm happy to do that, Wendy. My nonprofit corporation does not allow me to endorse products.
Correct.
But I can tell you what I do.
Right.
So my understanding is this: the CDC, the EPA, and environmental sciences have all made specific recommendations about how to get PFAS out of drinking water.
Right.
And according to the KYK manufacturer of Ion Thrive, the good news is they say their machines meet or exceed the recommendations from all three of those organizations for removing PFAS from drinking and cooking water. So I'm working diligently to reduce my exposure to PFAS, and I'm sure I've got decades of exposure, but I'm working on it. And one of my strategies is that I don't drink anything if I have that option unless it's gone through my Ion Thrive machine.
Yeah, I'm the same way. All my drinking water comes through my Ion Thrive machine. I either use glass water bottle or stainless steel. I use glass drinking cups. I use the clean water function for cooking or making, even if I'm going to brew a cup of tea or something, because I just really want to make sure in a sea of, of everything. And it's overwhelming when you think that they're all around us. Again, I want people not to feel overwhelmed by our enemy, that, hey, there's the PFAS out there and they're going to come in to get you. It's a matter of deciding, you know what, I'm aware of this, and now my awareness means I can take whatever steps I can. And simply using a water filtration, Ion Thrive system, that's a huge thing. If all of my drinking water has been cleansed and captured those, that's a big step in the right direction.
Well, the brain and body needs water. Dehydration, as we've talked about before, is so lethal. It is linked with the development of dementias.
Yeah.
And so I would rather give something else up and have the cleanest drinking water that I can possibly have.
Yeah, I agree. It would be wise, for a family. I know sometimes you look at the cost of a machine and you think, oh my goodness. But you're going to pay for it. You're going to pay for your health, either in prevention or in treatment. And I would much rather pay for it in the prevention. And sometimes you can't treat everything. You can go down the rabbit hole, and no matter how much money or energy you throw at it, does not necessarily mean you can get your way all the way back to wholeness and health. So like you, I have encouraged those around me, hey, you should look at this and make this a priority. Tuck away for it if you have to, or give something else up to have this in your home, because it can just be so beneficial to health overall.
To do a short digression, there are multiple studies out now showing that in some countries, like the United States, children, a good percentage of them don't drink any water during the day. They're drinking sodas and colas and sugary drinks and even fruit juice, which is high sugar because you don't have all the pulp and stuff from the fruit. So, if you could only do one thing, I'd say do water.
Yeah, I agree. That's such an easy start. That's an easy start for us. So, as always, I could talk to you for hours. It's a pleasure to speak with you, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate, like you, we both have this commitment to be intentional about what we allow in our lives. That's not just chemicals and substances, but that's toxic environments of all kinds. Whether that's people or personalities or whatever that is, if I want to live that longevity, flourishing lifestyle, we're careful about that. So I just want to give you the opportunity, if you have any last comment about protecting ourselves from PFAS, chemicals, things like that. So just anything you want to share with us before we go, I would love to hear from you. Well,
you already know a lot about what I value and what I think is important. You can't prevent everything. That's the first thing you have to understand, is you cannot prevent everything. It's impossible. You can't avoid every harmful person, place, thing, substance, or illness on planet Earth. But you can avoid some of them altogether. And you can reduce exposures to some degree to others. There's a term in epidemiology called the inoculum level. And for people not familiar with that, it refers to the amount of something to which you are exposed. Okay. And the higher the inoculum level of a virus or bacteria or PFAS or whatever, then the risk of your likely becoming ill goes up. So the higher your level of exposure to PFAS, the higher your risk of negative consequences. So your daily lifestyle choices add up. They are also bioaccumulative.
Right.
They add up to a positive or a negative outcome. So I can't worry about what I can't control, but I am conscious and consciously concerned about what I can control, controlling that, and then managing by avoidance or minimization or whatever what I can't control, because cumulatively, every little bit of prevention helps to reduce, lower the inoculum level of PFAS.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best we can do.
I agree. I know that my life today is the product of all the choices I made yesterday and the day before and the day before. And I want to encourage those listening or watching, if your health and wellness is not where you want it to be, the best thing to do is to make a new choice today, to make a different choice today, and just begin realizing that it's a cumulative effect. And so, years of poor decisions don't disappear with a day of right choices, but every transformation starts with a decision. So make a decision today about what you can and will do sustainably. Again, the lowest hanging fruit on that vine is pay attention to your water. Just start right there. Commit to drinking pure, clean, filtered, and we're not talking about hydrogen today, but the benefits of hydrogen water. Water is like the source. The building block here. So we just kind of want to encourage you.
I got one last comment, and that is that when people decide they're going to make some different choices and they don't feel 30 years younger the next day, some people tend to say, well, it's not working.
Right.
Okay, here's the research. What you do today in exercise, deep breathing, water, food intake, positive mindset, all of those things that help to slow down the process of aging, what you do today impacts your immune system. But that impact will not show up for about 12 to 18 months because it takes a lot for the immune system to fail. It also takes a long time for the immune system to build itself up. So right. Avoid feeling like it isn't working. Every positive thing you do today can result in a more positive immune system in a year and a half.
Yeah, that's such good advice. Thank you. Thank you for that. So I hope you will all take that to heart. Everything that we've talked about today, it's fascinating. And we just want to encourage you to make good choices for your health. We want you living a longevity lifestyle, being healthy octogenarians and beyond. And so centenarians, exactly. Absolutely. I want to join that club. I'm going to join that club of, and still be active and bright and alive and healthy. And so we just really appreciate the time. I appreciate the time you've spent with me, and to everyone watching and listening, we appreciate the time you've given to hear Dr. Arlene on this subject. And I hope that you will make some good choices starting right now. Thank you, Dr. Arlene.
My pleasure.
Okay, first of all, last time we did one of these, people were emailing me and saying, I can't remember everything you said. And I went, duh. So I decided you have a handout, and I took the questions and answers from the video and just put it on paper.
So I was writing for nothing.
And well, you probably were not writing for nothing, right? Because when you listen and write and see, you're much more likely to remember the information. So, feel free to take one of those, and that'll help you remember. How many of you have had COVID? All right. I went for 3.5 years without any problem with COVID. And then I got it. I cleared in 5 days once I was diagnosed. But I kept pondering, what did I do differently? Because 3.5 years, as much as exposure as we all had, that was ridiculous. And I came to only one conclusion. I had a really good friend of mine in Los Angeles, lifetime friend, whose mother died at 104, and she was finding that very difficult. And she said, could you please come down and spend a weekend with me? So I decided to do some traveling, which now that I've reinvented myself as doing primarily videos and posting them on YouTube, I haven't been doing any traveling. So I decided to go down and see her. So I took several thermoses of hydrogen water with me. And I know the hydrogen doesn't last, but the purification does. But it was kind of hot down there, and I drank all of my thermoses in one day. And so for the next 3 days, all I had was tap water. And I had COVID 2 days after I got home. Now, I'm not saying, there's no way to prove that that's why I was able to contract COVID, but it's the only thing that was different. But because as soon as I contracted it, by then I was already back on purified water, and the doctor couldn't believe that I cleared in 5 days. And so to me, that told me that my immune system was working pretty well. So all you can do is go by anecdotal things, but I really believe when you look at what do you absolutely have to have in order to stay alive for any length of time, well, first of all, you have to have oxygen. Because if you don't get oxygen to your brain, give yourself 8 or 10 seconds and you're already, losing consciousness. You have to have food, high quality carbohydrates. That means whole foods and vegetables to the least preparation you can do, because the brain has to have carbohydrates. It's number one source of energy. So these low carbohydrate diets scare me to death, because I don't know what that's going to do to the brain in another 10, 20 years. And talk about centenarians. I'm aiming to be a super centenarian. Why stop at just centenarian? So, and the third thing is water. Water dehydration is now clearly linked with developing dementia. You can live far longer with water, than you can with absence of food. So, those are pretty critical things. And then you've got physical exercise, because there are no muscles in the brain. And you've got to have the physical exercise to get your blood flow up and wash out the, waste products. So a high-level wellness lifestyle with about a dozen specific little things you can do are all contributory to staying healthy, keeping all your brain marbles jumping around for as long as you can. Okay, what are the questions? Here,
All right,
here.
so
Oh, you've got a mic on? Okay, good.
yes, I might. How does PFAS work with cooking? Does it make them worse or better to boil the water, for instance?
Well, if you boil water, what is it doing? It's killing primarily bacteria and viruses that live in the water who don't do well with high heat. It does diddly squat for a toxic forever chemical. You can boil the water till you're blue in the face. It's not going to get rid of PFAS. That's what's so scary. You know, usually we think of boiling your water and it's healthier. Well, yeah, it is healthier in some ways, but it does nothing for PFAS. They are so resistant to being degraded by any process except high-level filtration that is not going to do anything.
Okay. Number 2, how does ionization help with PFAS?
Well, Greg would probably be able to answer this more specifically than I can, but this is my understanding that ionization has to do with positive and negative effects on atoms and molecules. In fact, that's why, growing up in, the northern part of Canada, we had those gorgeous aurora borealis lights. That's all because of ionization. I don't think it does a thing for PFAS. Not one thing. Makes you feel a little better while you're looking at the, lights, but it hadn't done a thing for PFAS. People don't get how resistant they are to being degraded in the environment. So nice thought, but no cigar.
Can you be tested to find out the level of PFAS in your bloodstream?
Yes, ma'am, you can. I don't know what's available around here, but that's part of what the EPA has been testing. They've been testing people all over the United States. And I may have mentioned that in our little chat with Wendy. 97% of people who were tested for PFAS had it. That only leaves 3% that for some reason they haven't gotten in contact with it yet. So with those kind of statistics, just assume that you've got it and just hope it isn't too high. Okay, is that the end of our questions?
Any questions? We're going to take questions now from our audience. So if you have a question, raise your hands.
What are the symptoms that people feel when they are detected with that?
You're not going to feel anything from the PFAS. You're only going to feel the effects in your body of its action on the immune system. So it's loss of energy, getting sick more frequently, things like that.
I have a friend who just last week went through so many tests, and it started it with nausea, and then it went to a kind of numbness, and she went into emergency. They did blood tests. They told her nothing wrong with you, but she seems to be aching everywhere. And then they thought, well, you might have shingles. But
well, ERs don't test for the immune system function. I mean, that's for really serious. You got hit by a car and, all kinds of things. You were in a fight and bled all over the sidewalk and, those serious kind of things. But you can't walk into an ER and say, give me a test for PFAS, and now I've got it in my body and it's higher than it is in some people, and no wonder my immune system is collapsing. So the PFAS itself does not create a symptom. PFAS just wrecks your immune system. And then depending on your own particular makeup and how healthy you are, you're going to come up with any number of different kinds of symptoms. And they won't know that it's connected to the PFAS effect on your immune system.
How do you talk to a doctor to get the test?
Who
would you communicate with to get a test?
Well, you can ask your physician if he or she knows where they can test for PFAS in your area. It's not done. It's done by the EPA. I mean, this is just the beginning of looking at how bad is this. And so they started by testing people around the country in the United States. And this is what they came up. They found it in 97% of everybody tested. But you don't walk into your doctor's office and say, do you give a PFAS test? Some of the doctors don't even know what PFAS is because they haven't even read the research, because it's out in research papers. You rarely will find an article about it. I dug for 3 months to find the research papers I did, and most of it is in the last 2 or 3 years. So if you went to medical school 30 years ago and you're really happy with your level of knowledge, and somebody says, can you test me for PFAS, they may refer you to a psychiatrist. There are physicians who would know about it, but it's really spearheaded by the EPA. Yes?
Are municipalities doing anything to address the filtration?
That's one of the things I mentioned in our little chat, that the EPA and its affiliates are working with counties, states, cities to see what they can do to get it out of drinking water. But it's going to be expensive to get that level of filtration on that big a water supply.
And is there like a map showing where the higher levels are at?
If you go to the internet and you look up EPA research on PFAS, some of them do. I don't know if it's a map, but some of them will say, well, this area of the United States, we found the highest level. This area had the lowest level, kind of thing. I don't know what it is for us, but I'm not going to take a chance on waiting for them to test in Napa County. And I'm taking care of my own PFAS levels. Yes?
Is the term PFAS, is that synonymous with microplastics? When you talk about microplastics in the water?
No, it's not synonymous. But PFAS in these cheap plastic containers that you can just squish after you've drunk the water, the PFAS can leak into the water in those types of containers. That's the problem. And that may be part of the reason that it's not advised to put any plastic in microwaves, because that could potentially contaminate the food. But plastic is a very interesting substance. I mentioned that one of the pluses for PFAS is that it makes things sturdy because it has this strong chemical bond. It makes it last. Some of us have plastic in our house from the 1800s because it doesn't degrade. And I'm trying to get rid of plastic in favor of glass. I have in the past done a lot of freezing of food in plastic bags. And I'm gradually moving to glass containers, because glass containers are fine in the freezer. And as far as we know, glass is so hard that it's not going to leak into anything. But you can't do everything. There you come to the inoculum level. As a nurse epidemiologist, if we had an outbreak of some kind of illness in the hospital, which sometimes happens, we would look at the inoculum level. Everybody's nervous. We hear that we've got 2 patients in the ICU that have developed a staph infection, and pretty soon the whole hospital is panicked. Am I going to get staph? Well, chill, take a deep breath. Have you ever worked in ICU around the patients with staph? Well, no. Then why are you wasting energy and suppressing your immune system through worry and anxiety? You haven't even been exposed. So, you got to use your brain.
So is this where hydrogen water, consuming hydrogen water, you will detox faster?
Hydrogen water, from everything I read, supports the immune system. But hydrogen water is not going to kill PFAS. It's just I choose hydrogen water beyond just purification, because those are two separate things. You know, I want purified water to be without PFAS, and I choose water with hydrogen because of the additional benefits it will get me.
So I myself am almost 80 and.
Oh, you look wonderful.
But thank you, but with your magnifying glass, what have you found for a good natural makeup? I mean, I need touch-ups. I need more than touch-ups. So.
Well, that's a very good question. There are only two types of makeup that I find in research that says there is no PFAS in it. And that's the Rodin and Fields makeup and L'Oreal. And so I personally limit my use of makeup products, and believe me, I ain't going anywhere without some makeup on. I wouldn't want to scare somebody. But it's got to be makeup where the company says they're free of, you know, I can't even think of all the names, but they are free of PFAS chemicals. And those are the only two so far. In fact, there's a company right now, and I can't remember for sure which one it is, so I don't want to mention the company name, but they have marketed that their products were all natural. And so some people thought that meant it was free of PFAS. No, their products are full of PFAS. It's just, you know, they're not dumping chemicals in by the handful. But a lot of makeup starts with water. And if they use water that's not purified, well, you've got that in your makeup. And, you know, some of us that, you know, saw 40 a century ago probably had a lot of exposure for whatever makeup we used. But when you know better, you do better, starting whenever. So I limit my products to those two companies.
What was the first one?
Rodin and Fields.
Rodin.
And they're, one is, two women developed this product, and it's a small company. One, I believe, is a ophthalmologist. And the other one, I forget what the other one is. But they have paid attention to research. And they are wanting their products to be as absolutely healthy as it's possible to make makeup. You know, one of the other problems is that in many companies with makeup, we don't know where they're getting the dyes from. And you can, you know, the shorter the list of ingredients, the healthier something usually is. And the rule is look for food, look for other things with, you know, only 5 ingredients. Now that's pretty hard to find, but you can find it. And, you know, we don't know what's in high fructose corn syrup. We just know that it does a number on the liver. It is not metabolized in the body like food. It goes straight to the liver. And that's very scary. So my guess is they're going to find there's PFAS in high fructose corn syrup. And as I mentioned, that I have some good friends who call me up and say, all right, Arlene, what's the latest research? We're going shopping today. We have our magnifying glass. They like ketchup. So for the first time in their lives, they're standing in the store with their magnifying glass looking at the ingredients in catsup. And the first 7 brands they looked in, high fructose corn syrup was the number 1 ingredient. Finally, they found a small company that they'd never heard of that said right on it, free of high fructose corn syrup, and free of a couple of other things. And I said, good for you, it's worth the work. But it takes some investigation. It takes a commitment to wellness because it takes time. And it's not like grabbing fast food. And don't even ask about fried foods, you know. French fries in hot, low quality oil, it makes me shudder. I haven't eaten a French fry for a very long time. So, don't be paranoid, avoid, nobody's out to get you. They're only out to make money. And so you decide what companies you want to purchase items from and do your best, and the rest, just smile. Because smiling makes the brain produce endorphins, and that can help a little bit. Somebody asked me the other day, are you going to have a facelift? I said, are you out of your mind? And the man said, well, if you just went in and had them pull a little bit up of your face, you wouldn't have wrinkles. And I said, yeah, but then I couldn't smile. And I'm not taking Botox either. Because the research on Botox is, and I've got some nice little wrinkles here from whatever, and I'm not getting Botox. That's really close to my brain, number one. And number two, here's the research. If you have Botox on your face, you have just reduced the minuscule muscle movements that happen when you're happy, and so you decrease your ability to be empathetic. So I need to be empathetic, and I can't risk that. Now, there are people with intractable migraine headaches, and the research has shown that Botox at the back of the brain can seriously reduce those headaches. I'm not sure how that works, but I would probably risk the Botox. I had, when I was much younger, not as healthy, certainly, I was a nurse epidemiologist, but I wasn't immersing myself in current research. And when I started, there really wasn't a whole lot of research. But those headaches were absolutely debilitating. Absolutely debilitating. And unfortunately, I had not made a stellar choice in my marriage partner.
Nice way to put it, Taylor.
And so when I lost 210 pounds, my migraines went with it. So there's something about continual stress all day long from incompatibility. And while I wish everybody made a really good choice and divorce did not have to exist, it was certainly worth it in my case. And incidentally, he was a physician, and this just does not apply to all physicians, but he was a physician. And physicians often don't take really good care of themselves. That's well known. The shoemaker's kids have no shoes. The doctor's family kind of gets ignored from health. They dealt with illness all day long, and they don't want to deal with it when they come home at night. A few years later, he developed a spot on his back that turned out to be very cancerous. It migrated straight to his brain, and he was not long for the world. I believe if he had been taking really good care of himself and not spent so much time out in the sun getting this lovely tan, and if he had had himself checked over, you can't see your back. And even with a mirror, it's hard to see if you're developing something. And I believe you could have avoided it. But once it's growing and gets into your lymphatic system, it's all over your body. So prevention will help you much of the time. It's just remember that it's an imperfect world and you can't prevent everything.
Wonderful.
I was
Okay,
interested,
last question.
I was interested in your comment on the brain immune system. It's new to me. Could you give me a little information on it? Just like a little.
Well, that's very interesting because, 100 years ago, and I started in nursing, and they would have examples of a body with all the immune system parts in it. There was nothing there from here up. They included the tonsils and the adenoids and so on, but there was nothing from here up. In 2016, a physician had his own laboratory in which he was doing research about the immune system. And he had a recent PhD graduate working with him. They were looking at the brain using different kinds of scans and so on. And the young man said to the doctor, I don't know what this is on this scan. I don't recognize it. And the doctor kind of chuckled to himself and thought, yeah, well, he's young. He's not used to seeing a lot of scans yet. So I'll come look at it for you. So he came and looked at it, and he goes, I've never seen anything like that. Let's blow it up. So they started doing studies and identified glymphatic vessels that have a direct connection to the body's immune system. And those now show that the brain itself has a wonderful immune system, if you will. That it's hard to believe. 20th century, 2016, and nobody knew that the brain had its own lymphatic system and its own immune system. But we had to have the technology developed before you could figure that out.
No, you needed that for cancer to spread to the brain.
So, well, I'm sure that there's a connection. Once you get cancer in your lymphatic system, it's going to impact the immune system. But what's really funny is other doctors began looking at them, and one of them was quoted as saying, "Oh my goodness, we got to revise all the textbooks." And that's exactly true, because if you look now in a textbook that was put out before 2016, there'd be no immune system above here showing in any drawings of the immune system. And they're now starting to come out, but it takes a few years. But it just shows that progress can be ongoing. And stay abreast of it and do your best, and then relax and have fun. Thank you.